Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Good evening, and may the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our episode number 1 on the subject, the beast and its image. Let's read the great controversy, 438, saying, in contrast to those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus, the third angel points to another class, against whose errors a solemn and fearful warning is uttered. If any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, this same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Revelation 14, verse 9 and verse 10. A correct interpretation of the symbols employed is necessary to an understanding of this message. What is represented by the beast, the image, the mark? The line of prophecy in which these symbols are found begins with Revelation chapter 12. With the dragon that sought to destroy Christ at his birth. The dragon is said to be Satan. Revelation 12 verse 9. He it was that moved upon Herod to put the Savior to death. But the chief agent of Satan in making war upon Christ and his people during the first centuries of the Christian era was the Roman Empire, in which paganism was the prevailing religion. Thus, while the dragon primarily represents Satan, it is, in a secondary sense, a symbol of pagan Rome. The Great Controversy, page 438. In this reading, first of all, the admonition was given that a correct interpretation of the symbols employed is necessary to an understanding of the message. The same with a statement in track number 6, page 80, saying, here it is seen that prophecies and the correct interpretation thereof are profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect. So, the prophecies are profitable only if the interpretation thereof are correct, according to this reading. Track number 6 on page 80. Here on 2SR, page 78, it says, interpretation is correct only when inspired by the same Spirit. Thus, timely utterances are revealed. So, the Shepherd's Rod plainly telling us here in 2SR, page 78, that such interpretation is correct only if it is inspired by the same Spirit of inspiration that inspired the prophet who wrote the message. Now, for example, according to track number 6, page 34, it says, Isaiah's vision perfectly corroborates the aforequoted testimony. Both prophets could not possibly, except by the same Spirit, lay open the same condition with such absolute fidelity to fact. Thus, by Scripture and by logic, we are carried to the peak of evidence and of conviction that Mrs. White was inspired by the same Spirit as was Isaiah. So, the Spirit that inspired Isaiah was transmitted to Sister White. And that's what it means by the same Spirit of inspiration. And in answerer number 1, page 47, it says, this rational sequence consistently concludes that when a point in one's writings is not clear, then only the writer himself should be consulted concerning it if he is living. Otherwise, only the same spirit of inspiration, the original author of the writings, can clarify whatever is involved. Now, the writers of the Bible, all of them were already dead. Sister White was already dead. B.T. Hotep was already dead. Then for sure, without any doubts, the spirit that inspired all the Bible writers and Sister White and B.T. Hotep, all of them were inspired by the same spirit of inspiration. Here in answerer number 3, page 59, saying, since this prophetic gift was manifest through Sister White, as has been evidentially established, she necessarily then wrote under divine inspiration, as did the Bible writers. This statement can also be applied to B.T. Hotep by saying, since this prophetic gift was manifest through B.T. Hotep, as has been evidentially established, he necessarily then wrote under the divine inspiration, as did the Bible writers. Answerer number 3, page 59. Or in other words, it is called the mysteries of inspiration, by which only the Spirit of truth has an absolute authority to transmit such spirit of inspiration from one person to another. Here in answerer number 5, page 55, and since none but the Spirit of truth who transmitted the mysteries of inspiration, so only the Spirit of truth can transmit the mysteries of inspiration, because only the Spirit of truth has an absolute authority to interpret the scriptures. Here in tract number 3 on page 91, it says, for all there exists in this connection one great need, the Spirit of truth, whose right alone is to interpret the scriptures. So only the Spirit of truth has an absolute authority to interpret the scriptures according to this reading. And we know that Spirit is the Spirit of Christ, transmitted from one person to another. So here in answerer number 5, page 55, it says, and since none but the Spirit of truth who transmitted the mysteries of inspiration can interpret them. Of course, it is pointing to the Bible, the writings of Sister White, as well as the Shepherd's Rod publications. Since all the writers were already dead, only the Spirit of truth can interpret them by transmitting that Spirit from one person to another, and it is called the mysteries of inspiration, can interpret them. Then those who attempt to teach them without this inspired interpretational authority inevitably fall into the forbidden practice of private interpretation. 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 20. The great evil which has brought Christendom into its present almost boundless state of schism and consequent confusion, strife, and impotency. Answerer number 5, page 55. And the Shepherd's Rod plainly told us here in 2 Symbolic Code, number 12, page 6, saying, moreover, John 14, verse 26, does not say that we can, of ourselves, discover the hidden truths of the Bible, but on the contrary, that we should wait for the Spirit of truth to come to teach us, which teaching is called inspiration. to symbolic code number 12, page 6. And the shepherd's rod defined inspiration, and answerer number 1 on page 40 by saying, in its scriptural sense, inspiration is defined as a divine influence directly and immediately exerted upon the mind or soul of man. In other words, it is a special function of the Spirit of God. Answerer number 1, page 40. And accordingly, that the only medium that God can be able to communicate His people, interpret the Scriptures, is only through the channel of inspiration. Here in answerer number 3, page 30, it says, hence any objection to inspiration can only, in the last analysis, be an attempt to put God out of sight and to bring men to the front, or in other words, to bring uninspired men to the front, to cut off the only channel through which God can interpret the Scriptures, communicate with His people, reveal truth, and unmask error. Answerer number 3, page 30. And that is Satan's subversives. Here in White House Recruiter, on page 54, it says, Satan's subversives have sought to sever the lines of communication between the Spirit of truth and the people of God. White House Recruiter, page 54. Satan's subversives have sought to sever the lines of communication between the Spirit of truth and the people of God. Now, let us now concentrate on the subject, the beast and its image. Here in the Great Controversy, 438, plainly telling us, a class of people by which against whose errors a solemn and fearful warning is uttered. What are those solemn errors? And then admonish us concerning the symbolization pertaining to the message of the third angel. A correct interpretation is necessary to an understanding of this message. First, it says what is represented by the beast, what is represented by the image, and what is represented by the mark. It did not say who is the beast, the image, and the mark, but what is represented by the beast, what is represented by the image, and what is represented by the mark. And then it says that the line of prophecy in which these symbols are found begins on Revelation chapter 12. So when we'll be studying the third angel's message pertaining to the beast, its image, in the mark, Revelation chapter 12 is closely connected, pointing to the red dragon. Now, I would like to read track number 12 on page 28. It says, a full realization of the glorious reward that awaits mankind will even now compel men to shout for joy, and a like realization of the dreadful penalty that awaits all who fail to make God their refuge will cause them even now to weep and gnash their teeth, that all might realistically see these alternative prospects and be impelled thereby to repentance. The Lord has been at supreme pains not only to record a graphic description of the evil which, through the instrumentality of the beast, Satan has determined upon the whole world, but also a forehand to make of a similar evil a perfect type of the image of the beast. Now, here, brothers and sisters, we can easily discern the through the beast revelation, God's chosen medium, to completely expose the entire deception of the devil. I remember the statement in 2SR. It says here, page 10, while the enemy has succeeded in confusing the written word or the written word of God, God lightens the earth with His glory by these symbolic revelations, and by which He discloses the entire truth and uncovers the traps of the devil. Thus, through times and symbols, He makes wise the simple and confounds the prudent by showing that where there is no type, there is no truth. This volume contains a complete symbolic revelation of the entire world's history, both civil and religious. The reason these wonders were portrayed by symbols is the same as that which caused Christ to teach by parables. And the disciples came and said unto him, to Jesus Christ, why speakest thou unto them in parables? He answered and said unto them, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Daniel 12 verse 10. The chief purpose of teaching by parables is that the truth may be revealed to God's children and at the same time concealed from His enemies. 2SR page 10. So there are 3 reasons why God revealed this prophetic truth by symbols, types, and parables. The 3 chosen medium by God. First, to uncover the traps of the devil. And second, to disclose the entire truth. The entire truth concerning the plan of redemption. And third, it says that the truth may be revealed to God's children, but at the same time, concealed from His enemies. The same statement in 2SR page 253, it says, it is not only wonderful to invent a lamp, throwing out a light of such amazing candle power, but it is also astonishing how our God can conceal His marvels from the eyes of wise and prudent men. Then in His own time, He sets them upon high hills, by which He is able to light the pathway of the searcher for truth, and by its glaring power, blindfold the sight of the wicked. Therefore, the people that doth not understand shall fall. Hosea 4 verse 14. Light is sown for the righteous, and gladness for the upright in heart. Psalms 97 verse 11. Now let us be very careful concerning this subject, the beast and its image. I remember that statement, admonishing us to be very careful in studying the Word of God. I would like to read 2SR. In 2SR page 194, it says here, unless the meaning of every symbol is fittingly explained so that it cannot be contradicted, and a present truth lesson with special significance derived, the interpretation cannot be dependable and there can be no truth in it. God does not make vain repetitions, neither would He waste the time of His servants to write them. Therefore, every little symbol has its meaning and reveals a great truth. So, The admonition here is that we need to observe every little symbol, brothers and sisters, for there is an accurate significance of every little symbol, more particularly while we are studying the beast revelation. Because here in 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 3, it says, this symbolism shows that governments are symbolized by horns, not heads, and that when they are successive, the symbolism does not fail to reveal so. 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 3. I would like to focus to that statement saying, the symbolism does not fail to reveal so. That's why B.T. Hotep says that the picture tells the story, symbols do not lie. 1SR page 124. In track number 12 on page 6, it says, the world's history in prophecy is recorded first in literal terms, second in parabolical terms, third in typical terms, and fourth in pictorial terms. Track number 12, page 6. And the picture tells the story, and symbols do not lie. And that's why we read again and again to remind us that written words can be easily misconstrued. Here in 2SR page 288, it says, written words can be misconstrued, but symbols cannot, thus making it possible for both learned and unlearned to immediately distinguish the difference between truth and error. 2SR 288. Written words can be misconstrued, but symbols cannot, thus making it possible for both learned and unlearned to immediately distinguish the difference between truth and error. 2SR page 288. Now, I would like to read 1SR page 214. It says, the intention of the complete satanic scheme is to deceive the whole world. The statement made by Christ is true, that he, Satan, will try to deceive even the very elect, the 144,000, if it were possible. The spirit of prophecy, speaking on this scripture, says, this demon worship was revealed to him, John, and it seemed to him as if the whole world were standing on the brink of perdition. But as he looked with intense interest, he beheld the company of God's commandment-keeping people. Volume 6, page 15. I think the complete satanic scheme in the procession of the beast is pointing to the scarlet-colored beast. Or in other words, all the deception, the method, the scheme to deceive people that was employed by Satan through the instrumentality of the beast from the beginning, lion, bear, leopard, nondescript, brothers and sisters, or the four-headed leopard, nondescript, and the leopard-like beast, all of them are compacted into one, which is the scarlet-colored beast. We know that such revelation cometh from God. And God, our all-wise God, He chooses such medium, the beast revelation, to unmask completely the complete satanic scheme through the symbolization of the scarlet-colored beast. And that is why B.T. Hotep says in 2SR on page 112, saying, since the scarlet-colored is the last in the symbolical procession of beasts, he must possess all the character characteristics of his ancestors. Or in other words, all the satanic scheme that had been employed in different generations, he combined all of them in one, in the last generation of men, by which his target is to deceive the 144,000 living saints, or the last ordained ministry. Why? Because he knoweth that that is his Waterloo. Now let us read first White House Recruiter, pages 24 and 25. It says, "Here let every serious-minded reader pause to ponder what inspiration says." Verses 19 and 20 explain that those who escape the slaughter of verses 15 and 16 are to be sent as missionary to the Gentiles who as yet know not God. Hence this escape remaining ones are God's remnant, his first fruits of the harvest, his guileless servants, the 144,000, the elect, and only they, none others, the scriptures declare, shall bring all their brethren from all nations in a clean vessel into the purified house of the Lord, his white house. What is more, no right-thinking mind can even begin to conceive of the possibility that with any less holy and formidable an agency than such a mighty ministry, one escape from sinners and judgment, can and will the Lord ever finish the work and cut it short in righteousness. Romans 9 verse 28. Thereby saving his people from the terrible tempest that is now about to break upon the earth and last its length and breadth. Satan grimly knows this. He knows his time is short and growing painfully shorter. He knows that this faithful ministry are soon to be disclosed to you and to take the field against him. He knows that that will be his Waterloo. Hence his supreme effort now is to eliminate them, finding out at last, though that he cannot do so, his consequent aim will be to bring the time of trouble such as never was, in hope of destroying all. White House Recruiter, page 24 and page 25. And that is why the shepherd's rod plainly told us that the intention here in 1 SR 214, the intention of this complete satanic scheme is to deceive the whole world. And the statement made by Christ is true, that he, Satan, will try to deceive even the very elect, the 144,000, if it were possible. It is possible if you will not utilize the chosen medium given by God to uncover the traps and the deception of the devil, which is through the symbolization of the beast. Because if you will just dwell on the written word of God, by which it does not concern symbols, Satan has no difficulty to twist the meaning of the written word of God. Because that is the statement in 2SR page 10. Satan has succeeded to confuse the written word of God. But God chose the medium of the prophecy by symbols, by parables, and by typology. These three chosen medium employed by God are the only means that you can escape the wily snares of the devil. because Satan will have a hard time, brothers and sisters, to twist the meaning of the symbols, because symbols do not lie, according to 1SR page 124. And of course, if you will interpret the symbols by which such interpretation cannot be found in the golden bowl, for sure, it cannot be of God. The statement in 2SR page 289 saying, "Find your explanations in the bowl, and you will have no trouble in knowing the truth or of avoiding the ever-ready trap of deception. Thus, the difficulty in knowing the difference between truth and error is eliminated." 2SR 289. So whatever explanation that we will give through this symbolic revelation, more particularly concerning the beast revelation, be it sure that such explanation is found in the golden bowl. That is the only way that you can escape the deception of the devil, brothers and sisters. Now, since Sister White, as well as Betty Hotep, plainly told us in 2SR 277, the messages that had been sent by God in 1888, it is called the most precious message, according to 2SR 277, quoting testimonies to ministers on page 91. It says, 2SR 277, "The Lord in His great mercy sent a most precious message to His people." So that message that was sent in 1888, it is called by inspiration as a most precious message, brothers and sisters. So our study must be the Bible, writings of Sister White, the 1888 message, and the Shepherd's Rod publications. Remember, brothers and sisters, in Answerer number 2, page 17, it says here, "Conclusively, therefore, the kingdom church must be set up before the devil turns upon the remnant, those who are left behind and who are then being gathered, and against whom he wars for refusing to worship him." The pronoun him is pointing to the devil, and that is why it is called demon worship. To worship him in the person of the beast and his image. So that is very plain. Demon worship, brothers and sisters, is pointing to paying homage or giving allegiance to the beast and his image. That is demon worship. Now here in track number 12, on page 50, it says, "Although our first question should be, what shall we do to avoid giving allegiance to the enemies of God, so as to be found worthy of a place in His kingdom when this evil time shall come?" Track number 12, page 50. In track number 12, page 28, the passage, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand," denotes that all who, after hearing the truth, continue to pay homage either religiously or secularly to the image shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Revelation 14, verse 9 and 10. I think the statement, "continue to pay homage," is the same in the great controversy, saying, "whose errors," or in other words, it points out to doctrinal errors. Right? Here in the great controversy, I would like to read again that statement in 438, saying, "In contrast to those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus, the third angel points to another class against whose errors a solemn and fearful warning is uttered. The Great Controversy, page 438. So it points out to doctrinal error, brothers and sisters. That after hearing the truth and you still persist to remain in such doctrine, then that is the fearful warning given in Revelation 14, verse 9 and 10. And that error is the one that leads to worship the devil. And I think, brothers and sisters, the reason why in the Great Controversy 438 saying that a correct interpretation employed is necessary to an understanding. Because if the interpretation is not correct, then it must be error. And it is also closely connected to the tares. Because the tares, according to Christ's object lesson, it is embodiment of error. Let's read Christ's object lesson. On page 70, it says, the tares represent a class who are the fruit or embodiment of error, of false principles. Christ's object lesson, page 70, the tares represent a class who are the fruit or embodiment of error, of false principles. Christ's object lesson, page 70. Now, the mere fact that the Spur Prophecy says in volume 6, on page 17, saying, the light we have received upon the third angel's message is the true light. Now, the three angels' message is divided into two sections. First, the judgment that pertains to the dead, and second, the judgment that pertains to the living. So that reading, that the light we have received upon the third angel's message is the only true light. All others must be a false light. So, any interpretation derived from this subject which cannot be found on the writings of Sister White, the primary phase of the third angel's message, and the Shepherd's Rod publication, the final phase of the third angel's message, together with the 1888 message, as both of them recommend the message delivered in 1888, it must be a false light. In volume 8, page 194, it says here, artificial lights may appear claiming to come from heaven, but they cannot shine forth as the star of holiness, the star of heavenly brightness, to guide the feet of the pilgrim and stranger into the city of God. False light will take the place of the true, and many souls will be for a time deceived. God forbid that it should be so with us. The true light now shineth, and will light up the souls in which the windows are opened heavenward. Volume 8, page 194. And the only true light is the light in the third angel's message, according to a reading. And brothers and sisters, B.T. Hotep and Sister White will not declare the 1888 message as the most precious message coming from God if that message has no use at all. Or in other words, brothers and sisters, it utters the impossibility that you can comprehend the entire plan of redemption if we will neglect those messages that had been sent by God. God would not waste the time of His servants, Alonzo Jones and Wagoner, if the messages that they received from heaven has no connection at all with the plan of redemption. Now, let us now continue in this study, brothers and sisters, and ponder deeply the days in which we are living in. I would like to read to you this reading in the Great Controversy, hoping that God would help us, brothers and sisters. Here in the Great Controversy 390, saying, the Bible declares that before the coming of the Lord, Satan will work with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. And they that receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved, will be left to receive strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 to 11. Not until this condition shall be reached, and the union of the church with the world shall be fully accomplished throughout Christendom, will the fall of Babylon be complete. The change is a progressive one, and the perfect fulfillment of Revelation 14 verse 8 is yet future. Now, let us study closely, brothers and sisters. First, how Satan will deceive the world. The Bible made it so plain in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 9, 10, and 11 that with all power, supernatural power, supernatural signs, and supernatural lying wonders. Here in Great Controversy 449, it says, the most fearful, threatening, ever addressed to mortals is contained in the third angel's message. Remember, brothers and sisters, the third angel's message is directly applied to the judgment for the living rather than to the dead. Let's read again that statement in General Conference Special on page 39. In fact, the three angels' messages are applicable to the judgment for the dead only indirectly. For the judgment for the living is the all-important event, that is, the angel or the messenger is not sent particularly to explain what the judgment does to the dead, but what it is to do to the living. Now, this reading in the Great Controversy 449 must be addressed to the last generation of men, the generation by which God designs them to be translated to heaven without seeing death. Now let us read the Great Controversy 449. The most fearful threatening ever addressed to mortals is contained in the third angel's message. That must be a terrible sin, which calls down the wrath of God unmingled with mercy. And that terrible sin is called by inspiration in volume 6, page 14, and also in 1 SR 214 as demon worship. And that's why that is a terrible sin. It says, that must be a terrible sin which calls down the wrath of God unmingled with mercy. Men are not to be left in darkness concerning this important matter. The warning against this sin is to be given to the world before the visitation of God's judgments, that all may know why they are to be inflicted and have opportunity to escape them. So this is the reason why this message must be proclaimed, to give each individually to have an opportunity to escape the wrath of God unmingled with mercy. And it says, prophecy declares that the first angel would make his announcement to every nation, kindred, and tongue and people. The warning of the third angel, which forms a part of the same threefold message, is to be no less widespread. It is represented in the prophecy as being proclaimed with a loud voice by an angel flying in the midst of heaven, and it will command the attention of the world. The Great Controversy 449. We know that the significance of flying in the midst of heaven is that the message will be proclaimed through internet. And the Shepherd's Rod plainly told us that it is God who inspired the modern science. Here in 2SR page 229, it says, because the work is so broad, its expansion so vast, and its importance so great, God has inspired modern science to invent and build speedy equipment to quickly finish His work. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Here in White House Recruiter, page 36, it says, because time and the gospel are at their climactic hour, and the work is consequently of transcendent scope, expansion, and importance, yet of exceeding short duration, God has inspired man to invent and build time and labor-saving, wonder-working, earth-mastering tools and machinery of all kinds, marvels which would have staggered the imagination and beggared the credulity of former generations, notwithstanding that centuries apprehend the high and lofty one that inhabit eternity. Isaiah 57:15 declared, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end, and many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Daniel 12, verse 4. White House Recruiter, page 36. So in that reading, we can easily discern that it is already programmed by God that in the last generation of men, the generation by which God's designed them to be translated to heaven without seeing that, God inspired the modern science to build speedy equipment, how to communicate one nation to other nation, brothers and sisters, in very fast communication. And for sure, the communication line in 1930, 1955, in the days of B.T. Hotep, there is no comparison with the technology in our generation, because it is God who controlled the seasons. And in the last generation of men, God inspired modern science. And that is the reason why in the vision of John in the island of Patmos, the three angels' messages are flying in the midst of heaven. Can be easily understood that these messages will be proclaimed through internet, through this modern technology. Now let us continue to our investigation, brothers and sisters. I would like to read to us our page 158. It says, preliminary to that miracle working power, Protestantism, Catholicism, and spiritualism will have grasped each other's hand by means of a church federation. The difference of opinions in doctrinal points will be considered of no vital importance to salvation. They will see in that apparently innocent union a great movement for the settlement of the differences as well as for the conversion of the world. At the appearance of the false prophet and of Satan himself, their expectations would be realized, and the ushering in of the long-expected millennial time of peace shall be proclaimed to be at hand. Thus, on the surface, it will bear evidence that the world's crises are about to end. But as God's people have been warned of it all, they refuse to worship the image of the beast, which is a false international religion, and will be charged as rebellious, disturbers of the peace, and troublemakers. This will bring the great persecution of Revelation 12, verse 17. I would like to read first early writings. On page 143, it says, this remnant existing amid the signs and wonders that usher in the great and terrible day of the Lord is doubtless the remnant of the seed of the woman spoken of in Revelation 12:17. The last generation of the church on earth. Early writings 143. So the voice of inspiration says that Revelation 12 verse 17, that prophetic verse will be fulfilled in the last generation of men. Now here in 2SR 158, plainly told us that preliminary to that miracle working power, Protestantism, Catholicism, and spiritualism will have grasped its other hands by means of a church federation. And in volume 5, it is called the Threefold Union. In Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, it says here in page 451, it says, by the decree enforcing the institution of the papacy in violation of the law of God, our nation, that is United States of America, will disconnect herself fully from righteousness. When Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when, under the influence of this threefold union, our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, and shall make provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions, then we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan, and that the end is near. Volume 5, page 451. Now, this is the question. What is the prominent happenings that leads them to make a church federation? That these three will be united. That's why I remember that statement in track number 12 saying, current events that may fulfill prophecy. So that is the statement, right? Track number 12, page 53. Current events that may fulfill prophecy. Now, I would like to focus first, asking the question, how Satan will deceive the whole world. In what way? I think all of us can easily answer the question. By miracles. Now, in the Bible, it is very plain. And let us read Revelation chapter 13. It says, verse 14, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. So the Bible made it so plain that the medium by which the world will be deceived or will be under such deception is through miracles. What are those miracles? Now, here in the writings of Alonzo Jones, let us read, brothers and sisters. It is entitled, Image to the Beast. I would like to begin in this reading. It says, let us turn to the 13th chapter of Revelation to begin with this evening and study that passage of Scripture that refers to the United States and see if we may know where in the prophecy the working of this power comes. The working of this power comes in to deceive them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. I know that a good many are losing sight of what had been done by looking for something that they had decided must be done first. And while looking for that which they had decided must be done, and neglecting to use that which has been done, they will still go on, getting farther and farther from the light, is still less and less prepared to meet any of these things, whether they have come or whether they Here's another statement that I would like to read, brothers and sisters. It says here, we are to learn of the fulfillment of the prophecy and be able to detect that from our knowledge of the things of which it is an image. In other words, we are not to get the knowledge of the fulfillment of this prophecy from the prophecy itself alone. Or in other words, brothers and sisters, I think most Sabbath keepers, what they are waiting is the implementation of the Sunday Blue Law and not studying those prominent events that will precede before the implementation of the Sunday Blue Law. Let me read to you. Again, this reading, it says, in other words, we are not to get the knowledge of the fulfillment of this prophecy from the prophecy itself alone, but we are to detect and to learn of the fulfillment of this prophecy from the record of the nature, the working, and the disposition of the beast, of which this is only an image. So you see, in order to see when these passages are fulfilled, in order to see when they are met, we must be acquainted with the original. We must be acquainted with the beast and well acquainted with it, that when any one of these points appear, we can see where that belongs, because we know where it belongs and in the original, and then knowing where it belongs, we can avoid that thing. So that is the statement, brothers and sisters. Because in the Great Controversy, 442 and 443, Great Controversy. But what is the image to the beast, and how is it to be formed? So there is a formation of the image to the beast. And the Voice of Inspiration says how, in what way that such image is to be formed. The image is made by the two-horned beast. Who made the image? The two-horned beast. Brothers and sisters, let us study these subjects in all different aspects. I think that is the statement given by the shepherd's rod. I would like to read here in the Old Symbolic. One Symbolic Code, number 9, page 8. It says, the reason that Sister White speaks of the beast as the papacy is that, as explained in Shepherd's Rod, Volume 2, pages 85 to 89, 95 to 98, during the period of the 1,260 years of which she is treating in those instances cited in Great Controversy, she is dealing only with the papal head and not with the beast in all its different aspects. So I would like to focus that statement that we need to study the beast in all its different aspects. All different aspects, brothers and sisters. Or in other words, God imparted the knowledge concerning the beast to Sister White. God also imparted to Alonzo Jones, and God imparted it to B.T. Hotep. Now we need to study this subject in all different aspects. The aspects that had been dealt with Sister White, the aspects that had been dealt with Alonzo Jones and Wagoner, and the aspects that deal by B.T. Hotep. Let us combine all of them in one, in perfect harmony. Now let us read here the Great Controversy 443. It says, but what is the image to the beast, and how is it to be formed? The image is made by the two-horned beast. So it is already answered. Who made the image, brothers and sisters? So the image is made by the two-horned beast. Image of the beast, image to the beast. This image is made by the two-horned beast, and is an image to the beast. It is also called an image of the beast. Then to learn what the image is like and how it is to be formed, we must study the characteristics of the beast itself, the papacy. The Great Controversy did not say that the beast is the papacy, because the shepherds are very plain. The beast is not the papacy. But rather, the Great Controversy is only telling that the characteristics of that beast, to understand that characteristics of that beast, we need to study the papacy. Now, I would like to read first the Great Controversy. Because of the admonition, we need to study how the papacy had been set up. In what way, brothers and sisters? And in the same manner, That is how the image of the beast or the image to the beast will be set up and will be formed. Now, I would like to read first, brothers and sisters, on the Great Controversy, page 49. The Apostle Paul, in his second letter to the Thessalonians, foretold the great apostasy which would result in the establishment of the papal power. He declared that the day of Christ should not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposed and exalted himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And furthermore, the apostle warns his brethren that the mystery of iniquity doth already work. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 3, 4, and 7. Even at that early date he saw, creeping into the church, errors that would prepare the way for the development of the papacy. Great Controversy, page 49. Take the same statement in the Great Controversy 438. Whose errors? So the focal point is doctrines, because the errors mentioned here is doctrinal points. By such errors, prepare only the development of the papacy. Now, I would like to read the Great Controversy 575. It says, 575 and 576. Miracles also were called into requisition. Among other wonders, it was reported that as a husbandman who was about to plow his field on Sunday, cleaned his plow with an iron. The iron stuck fast in his hand, and for 2 years he carried it about with him, to his exceeding great pain and shame. In 576 it says, the rule forbade labor from the 9th hour, 3 o'clock, on Saturday afternoon till sunrise on Monday. And its authority was declared to be confirmed by many miracles. It was reported that persons laboring beyond the appointed hour were stricken with paralysis. A miller who attempted to grind his corn, so instead of flour, a torrent of blood came forth, and the mill wheel stood still, notwithstanding the strong rush of water. A woman who placed dough in the oven found it raw when taken out, though the oven was very hot. Another who had dough prepared for baking at the 9th hour, but determined to set it aside till Monday, found the next day that it had been made into loaves and baked by divine power. A man who baked bread after the 9th hour on Saturday found, when he broke it in the next morning, that blood started therefrom. By such absurd and superstitious fabrications did the advocates of Sunday endeavor to establish its sacredness. Or in other words, brothers and sisters, before that Sunday observance had been implemented, it was preceded by many miracles. And that occurrence in the past will be repeated again. The means by which Satan will deceive the whole world, it is true and by miracles. But the question is that, what miracles, brothers and sisters? I would like to read this reading. It says, therefore, this is a prophecy with which God wants us to be so well acquainted beforehand that we will look at it from the right side and not be behind when it does come. And in order to do that, you see, the Lord gives us a picture that has already been wrought out in history. He gives the course of events that have already been carried out, fulfilled before the eyes of men in a slow process, so that in studying it as it occurred slowly, in that we can become thoroughly acquainted with the principles that were established and their outgrowth and the result of them. And he does that in order that we may be so well acquainted with those things in all their bearings, that when the first hint of those things it touch here, we may know the outcome of it long beforehand, and therefore have ample time to take warning and never get caught. And in the next paragraph, it says, this is why the Lord does not want us to look for the fulfillment of the prophecy in the prophecy itself. Because if we wait for that, the most important things in the fulfillment of the prophecy will be those things upon which depend our salvation at the very moment that that thing is fulfilled. And if we are on the wrong side, if we are late, we are simply left. Therefore, He fixes it and He fixed it so as to show up the beast and its fullness in all His working, in order that by studying that, we may be able to detect the image in every page and on every side. The first hint of anything of the kind is enough, because we know what the thing is. Everything is in it, and therefore just as soon as that thing is touched, we can say that means the image of the beast. The image of the beast is in that thing, and I must avoid every connection of it or with it from now until the end of the world, watching the growth of that thing which has been started, which I know was the spirit and principle of the papacy when it was started. When I say that and avoid all of it, at every step, I am on safe ground, and unless I do that, I am on dangerous ground. Now, here's another statement that I would like to read to you, brothers and sisters. It says here, again, read the 16th chapter of Revelation. There the plagues, are threatened to come upon the peoples because of worshiping the beast in his image. It says, there the plagues, are threatened to come upon the people because of worshiping the beast and his image. Under the sixth plague, we read verses 13 and 14. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of what? Doesn't it read this way? I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and deceive people into making the false prophet. Congregation answered no. What is the false prophet? In other words, congregation, the two-horned beast. The image of the beast is the false prophet, because that verse in the 19th chapter tells it. And I saw the beast and the king of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image. In the 13th chapter, we read, he exercised all the power of the first beast before him in his sight, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Then what is the false prophet? The image of the beast. Now, think it thoroughly in this aspect, that the image of the beast is the false prophet. Remember, brothers and sisters, the medium by which the false prophet will deceive the world is true and by miracles. But what miracles that he will perform to deceive the whole world? Is it that he will show to the world that he is very powerful, that he is like Superman, that he can fly? What miracles? What specific miracles predicted in the Bible? I would like to read first this reading in 2SR. And 2SR page 153. The time of that wholesale deception is at hand. It will take more than great knowledge of theology to escape the most powerful trap His Satanic Majesty has ever devised. The wonderful miracles will be convincing, and the apparently genuine spirit of worship will bring deep conviction upon those who are subject to be misled. As the great men of the world declare its worship true, multitudes will accept their decisions without personal investigation. Add to all of this the following declarations of civil authorities: as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And we have an overwhelming power which human strength cannot resist for a moment. Only by a prophetic knowledge of the truth, with confidence in and thus saith the Lord, and in the power of His Spirit, can one escape the wily snares of the devil. Now, I would like to ask question again. What wonderful miracles mentioned in this reading, saying that the wonderful miracles will be convincing. So that wonderful miracles is convincing. But what specific miracles by which it is convincing? Now, let me read to you 1888 message entitled Working Miracles. Let's read. In Advent Review, Sabbath Herald 668, paragraph 4, October 17, 1899. These propositions are worthy of most serious consideration. They are not only the truth, but they are the truth for these times. For it is certain that diseases are multiplying upon the earth and will multiply. So the offered remedies and means of removing them will multiply. And as we have stated before, in these columns, this is one of the cheap things employed by Satan in getting power over the people in his war against the church of God. Now, I would like to read again the statement. These propositions are worthy of most serious consideration. They are not only the truth, but they are the truth for these times. For it is certain that diseases are multiplying upon the earth and will multiply. So the offered remedies and means of removing them will multiply. And as we have stated before in these columns, this is one of the cheap things employed by Satan in getting power over the people in his war against the church of God. But this is the thing that we need to understand, brothers and sisters. Satan has no power at all unless it is allowed by God. The book of Revelation was finished in 100 AD and it was recorded there 1,000 years ago how Satan will deceive the whole world, and accordingly it is by miracles. And would you think Satan waited the appointed time before he could perform miracles? No. If possible, as early as possible, he's trying his best to perform miracles to deceive the whole world. But God did not allow Satan, not until the appointed time. And it is one of the prominent signs given by God in the Bible that accordingly to our reading, brothers and sisters, the only medium that Satan can get power over the people in his war against the church of God is working miracles by healing the diseases of the people. And it always reminds me, this reading in the Great Controversy, 588 and 589. Let us read. It says, while appearing to the children of men as a great physician who can heal all their maladies, he will bring disease and disaster until populous cities are reduced to ruin and desolation. Even now he is at work in accidents and calamities by sea and by land, in great conflagrations, in first tornadoes and terrific hailstorms, in tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, and earthquakes. In every place and in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. He sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follow. And this is the portion that I would like to impart. Satan imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by the pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon both man and beast. I fully believe, brothers and sisters, as far as the Bible's for prophecy does concern, this so-called coronavirus is the fulfillment of this predicted event that Satan will impart to the air a deadly taint, and thousands will perish by such pestilence. Until the time by which, according to the voice of inspiration, that there will be no more remedies and there will be no more means of removing such disease as it is multiplying throughout the whole world. That is the time that a false prophet will come in and he will be the one to heal. Brothers and sisters, I would like to read this reading. And the quotation is concerning Revelation 13, verse 13 and 14, Revelation 16, verse 13 to 16, and Revelation 19, verse 19 and 20. Let's read the statement, although I will no longer read, but only the commentary. All these passages refer to the same period of time. That is the time just preceding the coming of the Lord and reaching to the coming of the Lord. And that period of time is just now, the time in which we live. The one thing especially marked in each and all of these passages is that in this time, great signs and wonders, miracles will be wrought expressly under the inspiration of Satan. One thing especially to be noted about these things is that they will be real miracles. You see, these miracles is genuine, brothers and sisters. It is a real miracles. These false Christ and false prophets shall show, not simply pretend to show, but shall show great signs and wonders. Those miracles which he had power to do, not simply that he pretended to have power to do. They are the spirits of devils working miracles, not simply pretending to work miracles. The false prophet that wrought miracles, not the false prophet that pretended to work miracles. And what is the miracles, brothers and sisters? To heal the diseases of the people, by which such disease, such malady, there was no more remedy, according to the voice of inspiration. And would you think we are not living in that predicted event, brothers and sisters? Look at the situation today. This coronavirus spread throughout the whole world. It seems that there is no more solution. And that was already predicted beforehand in the great controversy 589, that Satan will spread into the air a deadly taint, deadly poison through the air, and thousands of lives will perish because of this pestilence. The great controversy 589. And the time will come that it seems there is no more remedy, and the only remedy is miracle. And the one who will perform that miracle, as predicted in the Bible, is the false prophet. Now, let us read the statement here. It says, "Now let us read on. And he deceived them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast." Revelation 13:14. Let us read another passage now in the 19th chapter of Revelation, referring to the coming of the Lord, 19th and 20th verses. "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image." Someone told me the other day about another translation, speaking of that. I do not know whether it is the Revised Version or some other that reads, "False prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that had received the image." And it says, Elder D.T. Bordeaux, so reads the Prince. The same thought is in this, that shows then that the miracles, the deceiving miracles that are wrought, are done to deceive them that had the mark of the beast. But do men receive the mark of the beast before the image is made? Under the message and the responsibility which the message brings, are men held responsible for receiving the mark of the beast and worshiping the beast before the image comes on and undertakes to compel men to do it? No, because we found in our lessons here that not until the image was made, there was a way of escape from the worship of the beast. The way was open for a man to refuse. But after the image is made, there is no way open for a man to refuse to worship the beast, because there is no place on the earth where the power comes. There is no escape anymore. And then it is that men become responsible for worshiping either the beast or his image. There is no other way of escape. The only way is to turn to God. Then the time comes that the decision is clear-cut and must be made between God and the powers of the earth alone. Now, let us first ponder deeply, brothers and sisters, this reading. First of all, it is an erroneous idea to think that the working of miracles is performed in order to worship the beast and to worship the image. Because the Bible does not say that. The Bible is very plain according to the voice of inspiration in Revelation 19. It is very plain. In verse 20, it says, "And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image. Who are they that had been deceived by miracles? Those men that had received the mark of the beast, meaning they already received the mark of the beast. They already worship the image. Brothers and sisters, in track number 12, the language used by inspiration is paying homage, giving allegiance. Therefore, worshiping the beast, worshiping the image, receiving the mark, precedes the working of miracles. And that is why the Shepherd's Rod declared clearly in 2SR, saying, the time of that wholesale deception is at hand. It will take more than great knowledge of theology to escape the most powerful trap His Satanic Majesty has ever devised. The wonderful miracles will be convincing, and the apparently genuine worship will bring deep conviction upon those who are subject to be misled. Who are they, the people who are subject to be misled? According to the Bible in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 9 to 11, as explained in the Great Controversy 390, there are those people who did not love the truth. What truth? For sure, that is the truth concerning the third angel's message. The final phase of the third angel's message, the judgment that pertains to the living. And because they did not love present revelation, the present truth, under the seventh seal, concerning the final phase of the third angel's message, those who did not love, accept, and receive this truth, what will happen to them? Their names will be blotted out in the Lamb's Book of Life. Because the only way that your names will be inscribed in the Lamb's Book of Life, never to be or to be there, to retain there forever, is to accept the present truth. And to reject the present truth, your names will be blotted out. And the Bible made it so plain in Revelation 13, without any exemption. This is the statement in Revelation 13 on verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. That statement, shall worship him, whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Revelation 13 verse 8, you cannot avoid to worship the beast, to worship the devil, to be involved in that demon worship, unless your name are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Once our name will be blotted out, brothers and sisters, then without any doubts, you cannot escape. Unavoidably, you will be involved in such demon worship. And then you will be subject to the wrath of God unmingled with mercy. And that's why in the Great Controversy 438, it says, whose errors, that is false doctrine, false erroneous understanding concerning the third angel's message. Because it says in the Great Controversy 438, a correct interpretation employed is necessary to such understanding of the message, brothers and sisters. So we need now to study closely and be honest in our studying the scriptures. Because if we will study the scriptures to fit our ideas, brothers and sisters, then we will not be benefited. We are only fooling our own self and placing ourselves in such deception. So I would like to read here in 1888 message, the statement saying, it is important, therefore, for us to study the prophecy and see what it says, and as much as possible what it does not say. So I would like to read again the statement. It is important, therefore, for us to study the prophecy and see what it says, and as much as possible what it does not say. Here in 2SR, the Shepherd's Rod says in 154, it is of great importance that these things be correctly understood, for by the knowledge of the truth only can God lead His people on to victory. 2SR page 154. It says, it is of great importance that these things be correctly understood. For by the knowledge of the truth only can God lead His people on to victory. To us our page 154. Now, let us now study closely, more particularly to the last beast recorded in the Bible, which is the scarlet-colored beast. Here in 2SR, page 113, 2SR page 100, the last is an image of the first, verifying the fact that the scarlet-colored beast represents the image of the beast, represents the image of the beast period, fulfilling Revelation 13 verse 12 and 15. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So, reading to us our page 113 and page 114. Now, here the Shepherd's Rod says that the scarlet-colored beast represents the image of the beast period. So, we need to study closely now. When does the image of the beast period begins? But in this reading, the image of the beast period is at the time when Revelation 13 verse 12 and 15 is fulfilled. I would like to read again the statement in 1888 message. Let us read the statement. Let us now begin with the 11th verse of the 13th chapter. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he speaks as a dragon. When did he speak as a dragon? When he was coming up? Congregation answered, no. When is it that he speaks as a dragon? Read the 15th verse. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. That is when he speaks as a dragon. Is it? Congregation answered, yes. Isn't it that the image of the beast that speaks as a dragon? Congregation answered, yes. Was the image of the beast made when he was seen coming up? Congregation answered, no. When this beast was seen coming up out of the earth, was the image of the beast made? Congregation answered, no. Was then speaking as a dragon? Congregation answered, no. Then all of that verse does not apply in the places where it is printed, that you may see. This is a little more plainly turned to Testimony 32, page 208. And this was printed in 1885. Now, verse 11, Revelation 13, verse 11. Let us read the Bible. Revelation 13, on verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So accordingly, the lamb-like horn coming out of the earth occurred in 1798. But in 1798, the lamb-like horn did not as yet spake as a dragon. And accordingly, that portion in verse 11 was still unfulfilled. Not until verse 15 will be fulfilled. Now, here's another statement I would like to read, and hoping that we could be able to understand this very important prophecy, brothers and sisters. Now, let's go to the next paragraph in 1888 message. So let us read this reading. It says, when it shall speak, that was written in 1885. He had not yet spoken. Is that correct? Congregation answered yes. When was his sin coming up? Congregation answered in 1798. He had two horns like a lamb. When he was sin coming up, and has had them all the time. When he was sin coming up, and has had them all the time. Is that so? Congregation answered yes. So from 1798, we know the two horns is pointing to the two ruling parties, the United States of America, and accordingly, he has all that horns all the time. So here in 2TG number 17, it says, page 9 and 10, the beast two horns point to its two political ruling powers, Democrats and Republicans. So that is the two horns of the beast, pointing to the two ruling political parties. Now let us continue. reading. But there is the prophecy. He spake as a dragon. And we have found by the connection that it is the image that speaks and causes that as many as will not worship the image of the beast shall be killed. That is the dragon voice. But when it shall speak, it will reveal the spirit of the dragon. Then I say again that the 11th verse is not all fulfilled in the place where it stands in the prophecy, and in the order in which the things that it mentions are mentioned in the prophecy. The last expression of the 11th verse is not fulfilled until we reach the 15th verse. It says, let us read on 12th verse. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the beast, whose deadly one was healed. Now has this beast that was seen coming up out of the earth been exercising as yet all the power that the first beast before him did? Congregation answered no. And it says, has he compelled them that dwell on the earth to worship the first beast? The congregation answered no. Is that verse then the 12th verse fulfilled until the time of the 15th verse? Congregation answered, until the time after the image is made. Congregation answered, yes. So here the voice of inspiration says that, no, the prophecy is plainly telling that the beast will not compel them that dwell on the earth to worship the first beast, not until the image is made. Not until the time after the image is made. What does it mean? Not until the bill became a law. The voice of inspiration plainly told us that that bill in the time of Alonzo Jones, let's read here. I would like to read. This pamphlet is a report of an argument made upon the National Sunday Bill introduced by Senator Blair in the 50th Congress. It is not, however, exactly the argument that was made before the Senate Committee, as there were so many interruptions in the course of my speech that it was impossible to make a connected argument upon a single point. By these questions, etc., my argument was not only forced to take a wider range than was intended when I began to speak, but I was prevented from making a definite argument that I designed to present. I do not speak of these interruptions and counter-arguments by way of complaint, but only to explain why this pamphlet is issued. Nevertheless, it is a fact that while there were 18 speeches before mine, occupying 3 hours, in all of which together there were only 189 questions and counter-arguments by all the members of the committee who were present, I was interrupted by the chairman alone, 169 times in 90 minutes, as may be seen by the official report of the hearing. 50th Congress Session, Second Session, Messages and Documents. A national Sunday law is a question of national interest. While it is true that the Sunday Rest Bill did not become a law, the legislation having died with the expiration of the 50th Congress. So it is very plain that that Sunday bill, brothers and sisters, did not become a law, and it was died in 1888. And the Bible is very plain, saying that that predicted president, he will give life. Of course, that statement is pertaining to the bill that died in 1888. So let us read again in Revelation 13, saying, brothers and sisters, that he will give life again to that image. Then Revelation 13 on verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. So this verse is pointing after that bill had been died, because to give life is indicating that such thing had been died and then give life. So Revelation 13 verse 15 is pointing to the time when such predicted president of the United States of America, he will give life to that bill that died in 1888, saying, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak We know that the word both is used to indicate to object, brothers and sisters. So the image of the beast is pointing to two objects, brothers and sisters. And first of all, it is pointing to the bill that became a law and pointing to the symbolization of the scarlet colored beast. Because here in the old symbolic code, I would like to read to you. Here in the old symbolic code, let's read the statement. Here the shepherd's rod plainly told us in one symbolic code, number 4, page 7, it says, all who allow themselves to be put in subjection to this forthcoming religio-political power, which is nothing less than Babylon the Third, that is ancient Babylon, to whom God's people were placed in subjection for 70 years, was the first, the wearing out of the saints by the papacy, for at times and times and the dividing of time, Daniel 7 verse 25, was the second, and the image of the beast above mentioned is the third, of which the scarlet-colored beast of Revelation 17 is symbolical. So here it's very plain telling us that the image of the beast is the scarlet-colored beast, or the image of the beast is symbolized by the scarlet-colored beast. It says the image of the beast above mentioned is the third, of which the scarlet-colored beast of Revelation 17 is symbolical. So, what is the image of the beast? It is the image of, in reality, brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the image of the beast, which is pointing to the image of the leopard-like beast, and the image of the beast, which is the image of the nondescript beast. The scarlet-colored beast is a nondescript beast because it had not been described what kind of beast. The description is only his color. The same with the nondescript beast. The description is of the nondescript beast is by saying that in Daniel chapter 7, let's read Daniel chapter 7, how Daniel described the fourth beast, saying, verse 7, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So it is called nondescript beast because Daniel do not tell what kind of beast is the fourth beast. Unlike with the first 3 beasts, it says lion, the bear, and the four-headed leopard. The same with the scarlet-colored beast. There is no description what kind of beast is the scarlet-colored beast, just portraying his color. But concerning the beast, there is no such description, brothers and sisters. Unlike with the leopard-like beast. Now, let us go back again to our reading, brothers and sisters. Let us not wait until the image is made. Because when the image is made, or in other words, we need to ascertain clearly that our names must be written in the Lamb's Book of Life before the image is made. Because when the image is made and our names were not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, there is no more escape. And the Bible made it so plain, brothers and sisters, that all that dwell upon the earth, here in Revelation 13 verse 8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. No one could be able to escape to worship the devil in the person of the beast, any of them whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, according to this reading in Revelation 13 verse 8, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to read the Old Symbolic Code. Old Symbolic Code. 2 Symbolic Code 7 and 8, page 12. So, let us read that statement. Let's read 2 Symbolic Code 7 and 8, page 12. It says, will the churches unite before Ezekiel 9? We are digging, brothers and sisters, to ascertain clearly the prominent events that will occur prior to the time when the image of the beast is made, or prior to the time when the Sunday bill became a law. First of all, the spur prophecy is plainly telling us that the Sunday movement is making its way in the darkness. They were canceling the true issue. According to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, right? It says that, Volume 5, page 452. It says, "We are to be as men, waiting for their Lord, not in idle expectancy, but in earnest work with unwavering faith. It is no time now to allow our minds to be engrossed with things of minor importance. While men are sleeping, Satan is actively arranging matters that the Lord's people may not have mercy or justice. The Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are canceling the true issue, and many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is tending. Its professions are mild and apparently Christian, but when it shall speak, it will reveal the spirit of the dragon." Volume 5, page 452. So, let us distinctly separate the image while it is still a bill and the image when it became a law. At the time when the image is still a bill, there is still chance to escape. But when the image became a law, no more escape. Or in other words, during the period of time by which the image is not yet a law, it is still a bill. That is the time by which we need to ascertain clearly that our names for sure is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. What is the occurrences when the image is no longer a bill but became a law? Is there still any chance by which our names be written in the Lamb's Book of Life? Now, I would like to read first the statement here in 2 Symbolic Code number 7 and 8, page 12. Will the churches unite before Ezekiel 9? Will the nominal churches be united before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 and before the loud cry of the third angel's message takes place? The churches may incompletely confederate almost any time, but the union of church and state, the image of the beast. So here the shepherd's rod plainly declaring that the image of the beast is the union of church and state. Let us distinctly separate the image of the beast, which is represented by the scarlet-colored beast, the one we read in 1 Symbolic Code number 4, page 7, and the image of the beast, which is represented by the woman. Because the woman and the scarlet-colored beast is not the same. Here in tract number 12 on page 57, it says, "Thus the more sure word of prophecy, which never fails to tell the truth, declares that neither England nor Germany, but rather Babylon the Great, the image of the beast, will finally, for a short season, profit by the war." So Babylon the Great mentioned here is pointing to the woman. And it says it is called the image of the beast. So let us distinctly separate the image of the beast, which is represented by the woman, the image of the beast, which is represented by the scarlet-colored beast, and the image of the beast, which is represented by the false prophet. You still remember the one we read? I would like to read again. 1888 message. It says, "The image of the beast is the false prophet." So I would like to read again the statement. The image of the beast is the false prophet. So the statement, what is in the great controversy, that question in the great controversy, 438, saying, "A correct interpretation of the symbols employed is necessary to an understanding of this message. What is represented by the beast and what is represented by the image of the beast and also by the mark?" But we already read, brothers and sisters, that the image of the beast has three representations. The woman, tract number 12, page 56. The scarlet-colored beast, 1 Symbolic Code number 4, page 7. And also the 1888 message, the false prophet is the image of the beast. But here, in 2 Symbolic Code number 7 and 8, page 12, the image of the beast is the union of church and state. Concerning the false prophet, in tract number 12, on page 26, it says, "The power
that is represented by this two-horned beast will identify itself with the false prophet, for together they are cast alive into a lake of fire. Or in other words, it is easy to understand that the focal point of the two-horned beast pointing to the predicted President of the United States of America, by which we can identify him by the arrival of the false prophet, because they cannot be separated as predicted in Revelation 19 verse 20 according to this reading. Now let us read again the statement. The power that is represented by this two-horned beast will identify itself with the false prophet, for together they are cast alive into a lake of fire. Revelation 19 verse 20. From this it is plain to see that the wonders which the beast does in the sight of men, and by which he deceived them that dwell on the earth, are wrought by the false prophet. Revelation 19 verse 20. In the sight of the beast. Clearly then, the beast's civil authority combined with the prophet's supernatural power points to a union of beast and prophet and affiliation of state and of church representatives. Now remember, the great controversy, let us read again the statement in the great controversy, 443. It says, but what is the image to the beast? And how is it to be formed? The image is made by the two-horned beast. The great controversy 443. It says, the image is made by the two-horned beast. Now, if the image of the beast is represented by the false prophet, therefore the statement, the image of the beast is made by the two-horned beast, is figurative speech. Meaning, it is the President of the United States of America that will prepare the way of the false prophet to come on the stage of action. In what way? According to our reading, because of such disease, such maladies by which there is no more remedy, there is no more solution, and the only remedy, they thought, or even the President of the United States of America, is the miracle. The healing miracles by which no one can perform that healing miracles except the predicted false prophet. And through that miracles, both the President of the United States of America and the false prophet, they will deceive the whole world as predicted in the Bible. And who prepared that miracles? It is Satan. Satan, according to the great controversy, 589. Let's read the great controversy, 589. Satan imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by the pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon both men and beasts, not only men, but as well as beasts, brothers and sisters. According to the prediction, how does the dictionary define the word taint? Satan impart into the air a deadly taint, brothers and sisters. That through that deadly taint, brothers and sisters, pestilence, thousands perish in such pestilence. It says here, contaminate or pollute. So the word taint meaning there is a bad or undesirable quality or substance that placed into the air. And that was predicted beforehand by the prophet, brothers and sisters, that the miracles that the false prophet will perform to deceive the whole world is healing disease. By which such disease, it seems incurable. There is no more remedy. And at the time when the President of the United States of America will offer to the religious aspect to solve the problem, that what it means that he made the image of the beast, meaning he prepared the way of such satanic miracles performed by the false prophet to deceive the whole world. Now let us go back again to our reading, brothers and sisters, here in 2 Symbolic Code, number 7 and 8, page 12. It says, the churches may incompletely confederate almost any time. But the union of church and state, the image of the beast. So the image of the beast is the union of church and state. So let us distinctly separate the image of the beast represented by the false prophet and the image of the beast represented by the woman, and the image of the beast represented by the scarlet-colored beast. But it is defined by the shepherd's rod, the union of church and state. So if it is pertaining to the image of the beast, which is the false prophet, the union of church and state there, the church is the false prophet and the state is the president of the United States of America. That is image of the beast. Let us read again that statement in tract number 12, page 26. The power that is represented by these two horned beasts, meaning that is pertaining to the horn power recorded in 2 SR 151, that will be against God, against His people, and against His truth. Tract number 3, page 25. The power that is represented by these two horned beasts will identify itself with the false prophet, for together they are cast alive into a lake of fire. Revelation 19 verse 20. From this it is plain to see that the wonders which the beast does in the sight of men, and by which he deceives them that dwell on the earth, Revelation 13 verse 13 and 14, are wrought by the false prophet, Revelation 19 verse 20, in the sight of the beast, Revelation 13, 14. Clearly then, the beast's civil authority combined with the prophet's supernatural power points to a union of beast and prophet, an affiliation of state and of church representatives. Tract number 12, page 26. Now, I would like to read first 2 SR page 160. 2 SR page 160. It says, the tabulation of events in this chapter fully illustrate great prophetic occurrences that are to transpire in rapid succession. As shown in the chart, the union of the churches represented by the woman sitting on the heads must take place before the combined power of the beast and the false prophet is fully realized. 2 SR page 160. Now the shepherd's rod says that the woman sitting on the seven heads precedes that combined power of the beast and the false prophet, brothers and sisters. So that is very plain in that reading. So we need to focus first our attention to the nearest event that had been predicted in the Bible from prophecy, more particularly in the shepherd's rod, when the woman will sit on the seven heads. Now let us read again the statement here into symbolic code number 7 and 8, page 12. It says, the churches may incompletely confederate almost any time, but the union of church and state, the image of the beast, will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. For the fact that the anger of the nations, the time of trouble, Daniel 12 verse 1, the wrath of God, the 7 last plagues, Revelation 15 verse 1, and the time to judge the dead, Daniel 8 verse 14, are events separate and distinct, one following the other. Early writings, page 36. Therefore, the persecutions against the church by the image beast arises in the time of the judgment of the living, the time of the loud cry, after the sealing of the 144,000. Now, first of all, the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the image of the beast, the union of church and state, will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. So, when such event will be fulfilled, the union of church and state, or the image of the beast, the judgment of the dead is already completed, according to this reading, into symbolic code number 7 and 8, page 12. So that is very plain, right, brothers and sisters? The image of the beast, which is the church and state union, will take place only after the judgment of the dead is completed. Or in other words, when the image of the beast takes place, which is the union of church and state, indicates that the judgment of the dead is finished. The judgment of the dead is completed.
according to this reading. 2 Symbolic Code, number 7 and 8, page 12. Let us read another statement in 2 Symbolic Code, number 11, page 6. It says, if the investigative judgment for the living does not begin till after Ezekiel 9, please tell me when the tares in the Seventh-day Adventist Church are judged, for they are living when the sealing message comes. Now let us read the statement. We have no special light on this question other than that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. And if the tares must be judged in the period of the dead, then they must be judged, their names blotted out after the slaughter and just before the commencement of the judgment of the living saints. Now let us enumerate one by one the important points in this reading, brothers and sisters. Now, here the shepherds are declared clearly that B.T. Hotep has no special light on the question. What is the question? Investigative judgment for the living. But the answer of B.T. Hotep is investigative judgment of the living. So concerning the judgment for the living, B.T. Hotep has no special light. The question is, if the investigative judgment for the living, so the question is concerning the investigative judgment for the living. And B.T. Hotep says, we have no special light on this question. So concerning the question of investigative judgment for the living, B.T. Hotep has no special light. I remember the statement in General Conference Special on page 39 and page 40. Let me read to you. General Conference Special, page 39 and page 40. It says, so we see that the more we consider the subject, the more obvious becomes the truth that the third angel's message in its final phase is the judgment for the living, the harvest. Plainly then, the work of Elijah is to give light on the judgment for the living. General Conference Special, page 39 and page 40. We as the Bedian, we are trained by B.T. Hotep that we need to be very careful on the grammatical rule, brothers and sisters. And B.T. Hotep plainly told us here in 3 Symbolic Code, number 7, page 4, for saying, you yourself know that such careless and thoughtless interpretations, which pay no attention to language, and which obey neither rule nor logic, are not inspired but are private and thus inevitably false. 3 Symbolic Code, number 7, page. So any interpretation does not pay attention to the language used is private and inevitably it must be a false interpretation. Because it says in 2SR 118, this grammatical rule is followed in the scriptures and it is one way to recognize present truth. 2SR 118, this grammatical rule is followed in the scriptures and it is one way to recognize present truth. And for example, in 1TG, B.T. Hotep observed the prepositions. Here in 1TG number 4, it says here in page 24, bear in mind that the purging was to continue up to the time of the end, and that the king of the south was to push against the king of the north at the time of the end. Now mark that the preposition to terminates at the preposition at, that where the purging ends, the king pushing begins. 1 TG 424. So in that reading, B.T. Hotep observed the grammatical rule of the preposition, because preposition is one of the 8 parts of speech. So let us distinctly separate the preposition for and the preposition of. Judgment for the living and judgment of the living. So let us distinctly separate the preposition, brothers and sisters. The same with the image of the beast and the image to the beast. The preposition of and the preposition to. Because according to Story of Redemption, I would like to read Story of Redemption in 381. By this first beast is represented the Roman Church, an ecclesiastical body clothed with civil power, having authority to punish all dissenters. The image to the beast represents another religious body
clothed with similar powers. Story of Redemption, page 381. So the image to the beast, the preposition used is to. And the image to the beast, according to this reading, is an ecclesiastical body clothed with civil power. So let us distinctly separate the image to the beast, because that is ecclesiastical body, and the image of the beast, brothers and sisters, which pointing to first to the scarlet colored beast. Now, let us go back again to our reading to symbolic code number 11, page 6. It says, we have no special light on this question. What is the question? Concerning the investigative judgment for the living. We already read General Conference Special, page 39 and page 40. The work of antitypical Elijah the Tishbite is to explain the judgment for the living. General Conference Special, page 39 and page 40. And the question here is concerning the judgment for the living. If the investigative judgment for the living does not begin till after Ezekiel 9, please tell me when the tares in the Seventh-day Adventist Church are judged, for they are living when the sealing message comes. And B.T. Hotep says, we have no special light on this question. So B.T. Hotep has no special light concerning the judgment for the living. Other than that, the judgment of the living, so the light that B.T. Hotep has is concerning the judgment of the living and not concerning the judgment for the living, because he has no special light concerning the question. Now, I would like to read again. It says, we have no special light on this question other than that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. Now, what is the judgment of the living? By which B.T. Hotep says that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. And if the tares must be judged in the period of the dead, of course, the tares mentioned here must be the living wicked, by which the shepherd's rod says they must be judged in the period of the dead. Then they must be judged, their names blotted out. So the blotting out of sins, the blotting out of names rather. The blotting out of names, the names of the living wicked, they must be blotted out in the period of the judgment of the dead, according to this reading, or in the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead. So let us read again the statement. We have no special light on this question other than that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. Now, the judgment of the living is divided into two sections. The judgment of the living on earth and the judgment of the living on the heavenly sanctuary. Here in the old symbolic code, let's read the statement. 1 symbolic code number 16, page 3. Malachi 3 first applies as a type to the purification of the earthly temple in the days of Christ, John 2 verse 14 and 15. But the direct application finds its fulfillment in the antitype, that is, in the purification of the church, when he comes to his earthly temple, church, to purify the sons of Levi, the ministry, the 144,000. After this, he comes for the investigative judgment of the living to his heavenly temple to blot out their sins. So that is very plain here in 1 symbolic code number 16, page 3. So the judgment of the living is divided into two sections. First, the judgment of the living on earth and the judgment of the living on the heavenly sanctuary. The judgment of the living on the heavenly sanctuary, according to that reading in 1 symbolic code number 16, page 3, is the blotting out of sins. And the shepherd's rod definitely declared here in 2 symbolic code number 11, page 6, that the judgment of the living is after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. So the judgment of the living mentioned here, that is after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, must be the judgment of the living in the heavenly sanctuary, which is the blotting out of sins. So the blotting out of sins takes place after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. So we need to ascertain clearly, brothers and sisters, the blotting out of sins. In 2SR 220, it says, I would like to read this statement. Is there any way whereby we can determine the time of the opening of the seal and the commencement of the judgment for the living? If God so faithfully revealed to the living the commencement of the judgment for the dead, it cannot be possible that He would keep secret the time of the judgment for the living. If He did, we would have no present truth in the time of the last seal. Neither could there be justice in such secrecy, nor could such judgment be legal. Therefore, a revelation of the judgment for the living is of as great importance as the revelation of the gospel itself. For the judgment blotting out the sins is the crowning act in the gospel of Christ. Thus we conclude that when the seal is opened and the judgment for the living begins, we must know it. The Day of Atonement in its type proves the same, for the Israelites were well informed of the event, their duty, and the consequence. Now, first of all, the main subject in 2SR 220 is the judgment for the living. When does the commencement of the judgment for the living? And the shepherd's rod emphasized that if God faithfully revealed to the living the commencement of the judgment for the dead, then there is no reason that God would keep secret the commencement of the judgment for the living. Remember, in General Conference Special, page 39, it says that the angel is not sent to explain the judgment, what it does to the dead, but rather what it is to do to the living. Or in other words, the three angels' messages is directly applied to the judgment that pertains to the living. So the application of the three angels' messages in the judgment that pertains to the dead is only indirect application. The direct application must be in the judgment that pertains to the living. Now, if in the indirect application, God made known the commencement of the judgment that pertains to the dead, then how much more in the judgment that pertains to the living, by which such prophecy is directly applied to them? Because accordingly, in 2TG number 12, page 30, they are the people that they need to know that their cases are on trial. To the people who must know that their cases are on trial. That is the people under the seventh seal, or the people living in the last generation of men, brothers and sisters. And that what Satan did to keep them in ignorance concerning such proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, as stated in White House Recruiter, page 31 and 32, that Satan is determined to keep God's people in ignorance of timely truth. And what is more damaging darkness than to keep them in ignorance concerning the things by which God would have them to know, while their cases in the heavenly sanctuary is pending? None, absolutely none. Because according to tract number 3, page 54, that for when a person's judgment is pending and he is unaware of the fact, he cannot stand when his case will be investigated. And to repeat again, in 2TG 30, page 15, it says that the devil is more shrewd than we can imagine. He's not particular whatever things that you believe, as long as he can keep you ignorant on the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. And that is why the statement here in 1TG number 51 on pages 5 and 6, if the church is not commensurably growing and expanding, then how can she be a living church? 1 TG 51, page 5 and 6. If the church is not commensurably growing and expanding, then how can she be a living church? And how can she keep up with the signs of the times and with the progress in the sanctuary above? It is very important, brothers and sisters, that we need to understand the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. That is the focal point of the third angel's message. There are two main points of the third angel's message: the beast revelation and the sanctuary construction and service. It's easy to understand that God is trying to inform us that no one could be able to escape such complete satanic scheme, which is revealed by God through the beast revelation, unless our names be written in the Lamb's Book of Life. That is the only solution, brothers and sisters, the only remedy that we could assure clearly that we could escape such oncoming destruction, oncoming deception. And that is why B.T. Hotep says in White House Recruiter on page 11, saying, what is of first and supreme importance to each, however, is to know for a surety that his name is written in the book. To have this most blessed assurance, one must first know what will keep one's name out of the book and what will put it in. And the only thing that our names will be blotted out in the Lamb's Book of Life is by committing the unpardonable sin, sinning against God. According to track number 3 on page 7, it says that not every name that has been entered in the Lamb's books will be retained there, is borne out with sad conclusiveness by the following scriptures. And the Lord said unto Moses, whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Exodus 32 verse 33. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life and out of the holy city and from the things which are written in this book. Revelation 22 verse 19. In that reading, there are two prominent acts by which our names will be blotted out in the Lamb's books of life. First, sinning against God. Sinning against God is sinning against the Holy Ghost. And in 1 TG number 5, page 18, it says here, you know for a fact that there is not one who names himself a Christian that talks outright against God. What professed Christians really do is say things against God's revealed truth without realizing that they are talking and sinning against the Holy Ghost and thus against God Himself too. Even some present truth believers now and then drop a word of criticism, saying things by which to bolster their own reputation and down on others or to win someone to their way of thinking at the expense of God's cause. These kinds of sins are the most insidious, and the greater the ability of the one that is engaged in such practices, the greater the damage. 1 TG number 5, page 18. And for sure, sinning against the Holy Ghost is rejecting present truth. In 2SR page 198, it says, brothers and sisters, the rejecting of light and present truth is the sin against the Holy Ghost. And whosoever speaketh a word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. But whosoever speaketh against the Holy Ghost, present truth, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this world, neither in the world to come. Our attitude towards present truth would either make a tree good and his fruit good, or else make the tree corrupt and his fruit corrupt. For the tree is known by his fruit. Verse 33. Thus, present truth has the power to change the individual and to fit him for eternal life. which is the seal of the living God. Say Jesus, verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. And brothers and sisters, the only present truth recorded in the shepherd's rod and the writings of Sister White is the third angel's message. There is no other present truth. And the third angel's message is pointing to the sanctuary doctrine and the beast revelation. Now, let me read to you here in Story of Redemption. Story of Redemption in page 381. Those who had accepted the light concerning the mediation of Christ, and we know that is in the heavenly sanctuary. Those who had accepted the light concerning the mediation of Christ and the perpetuity of the law of God found that these were the truths brought to view in the third message. I would like to read again Story of Redemption 381. Those who had accepted the light concerning the mediation of Christ and the perpetuity of the law of God found that these were the truths brought to view in the third message. So, the message brought by the third angel is concerning first the moral law and the sanctuary, the daily and the sanctuary. Because the daily is pointing to the moral law and the sanctuary is pointing to the ceremonial law. Christ's mediation in the heavenly sanctuary. And it says here in 2SR page 268, I would like to read. Thus the woman represents a church that keeps the commandments of God, moral law, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ, ceremonial law, or the plan of salvation revealed in the light of the spirit of prophecy. Revelation 12 verse 17. So, this is the statement. And B.T. Hotep says that if you want to ascertain clearly God's true movement, here in 2SR 261, to John was shown the true spiritual church of God in all ages in a symbol of a woman. And the only way that you can recognize that that movement is represented by the woman because God bestowed unto them the two divine laws, the moral law and the ceremonial law. And that ceremonial law is pointing to the holy feast, pointing to the sanctuary doctrine, the sanctuary services, brothers and sisters. Now let us go back again to our study. Brothers and sisters, the third angel's message is pointing to Christ's mediation in the heavenly sanctuary, according to reading in Story of Redemption, page 381. Or in other words, the third angel's message is a message that reveals the plan of redemption, the plan of salvation, and at the same time, the third angel's message is revealing how Satan is trying to destroy the plan of redemption. And God chose the medium of the beast revelation to expose or uncovers the traps of the devil, to expose his entire deceptions. And in the book of Daniel, on chapter 8, it was illustrated by the exceeding great horn. How the exceeding great horn, brothers and sisters, trodden underfoot the daily and the sanctuary. So, in this study, brothers and sisters, we can immediately discern that the reason why the prophet declared clearly in Great Controversy, page 438, saying that the line of this prophecy by which these symbols begins on Revelation chapter 12, concerning the message of the third angel. Or in other words, in the three periods of the exceeding great horn, as stated in tract number 3, page 39. The first period is pagan Rome, the second period is ecclesiastical Rome, and the third period is the Protestant period. Runs parallel the symbolization of the red dragon. The red dragon in the period of pagan Rome, the red dragon in the period of papal Rome, and the red dragon in the period of the Protestant period. By which, in reality, the direct fulfillment, direct application of Revelation chapter 12 is in the last period, in the Protestant period, more particularly in the period of the judgment that pertains to the living. Now, I would like to read again the statement in 2 Symbolic Code, number 11, page 6. So let us read again the statement here. The reason that we study it closely because the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain, right? We already read that the image of the beast takes place after the judgment of the dead is completed. 2 Symbolic Code number 7 and 8, page 12. It says that the churches may completely confederate almost any time, but the union of church and state, which is the image of the beast, will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. So it, in absolute importance, that we have a complete understanding concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary when the judgment that pertains to the dead will close. Because the image of the beast will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. So it utters the impossibility that you could ascertain clearly when the image of the beast will take place unless you have a complete understanding when the judgment of the dead will be completed in the heavenly sanctuary. Because the image of the beast will not take place not until after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. According to that reading in 2 Symbolic Code, number 7 and 8, page 12. Now, for sure, brothers and sisters, the warning given by the third angel, no, it is not given to them who experienced death, but rather to the saints in the last generation of men. The warning message of the third angel is addressed to them, saying, if any man, let's read again the statement. In tract number 12, page 28, it says, the passage, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, denotes that all who after hearing the truth continue to pay homage either religiously or secularly to the image shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Revelation 14 verse 9 and 10. Now let us analyze closely, brothers and sisters. We already read in Revelation 19 verse 20 that the people that will be deceived by that working miracles of the false prophet are those people who already received the mark of the beast, who already worship the image of the beast, those who already worship the beast in their foreheads. Or in other words, let us distinctly separate the worshiping of the beast, worshiping of the image, receiving the mark by hands, and worshiping the beast, worshiping the image, and receiving the mark in our foreheads or by foreheads. Because we already read, according to the 1888 message, that as far as the Bible is thus concerned, in Revelation 13, verse 15, that he did not compel men to worship the beast, to worship the image, and to receive the mark, not until the image became a law. Brothers and sisters, or in other words, at the time when the image became a law, for sure, it can be implemented by hands, by force, because it is already a law. So, let us distinctly separate the material side and the spiritual side. The spiritual side is that during the time when the image is still a bill, those who persistently hold that errors, according to the Great Controversy 438, errors, then spiritually, you are worshiping the beast. You are worshiping the image. You are receiving the mark in your forehead because you persistently hold that errors. Doctrinal errors as represented by the tares, according to Christ Object Lesson, page 70. Or in other words, brothers and sisters, the present truth under the seventh seal, the final outpouring of present truth, as stated in Answerer number 1, page 90, is illustrated in 1 SR 126, the seventh step, which is the pure, unadulterated truth. 1 SR 126, it says, it is not to be so with the seventh, for it is the last, it must be pure. This last portion, pure and undefiled, is represented by the angel of Revelation 18:1. Pure, unadulterated truth, brothers and sisters. Meaning, it doesn't mean that the doctrines that had been taught by Martin Luther, Knox, Wesley, Campbell, Miller, Sister White, and B.T. Hotep, there is a false doctrine or there is an error. No. But rather, after they died, accordingly, these high places, of course the high places are pointing to the headquarters of such organizations, they mix sacred and common. The sacred are the inspired writings and the common is the private interpretation. Here in 2SR page 95, the seven heads are to symbolically point out these high places ruled by unsanctified leaders who had attempted to mix the sacred with the common and refused to hear the word of the Lord. In 2TG, it says, let us read the statement in 2TG 39. It says here in 2TG 39 on page 16, as the barley cake that smote and ruined the Midianite tent did forecast divine aid for Gideon's victory over the Midianites, so the cereals eaten by as barley cakes do signify that the truths accepted were as of the Spirit, as of divine origin. So that is pointing to the inspired writings. In the preparation of them, though is where the objectionable part comes in. What is the preparation, brothers and sisters? It says, though is where the objectionable part comes in, for inspiration points out that these were baked on dung, that is man's dung, instead of on wood, emphatically denoting that these truths were defiled by men while being prepared for the flock. And what else could the preparation be but the private additions, omissions, perversions, and misapplications by uninspired men who preach from the pulpits on these subjects and who write the so-called pure Bible truths and hand them to the people. 2TG 39, page 16. So that's what happened. For example, among the media, they mix the sacred, which is the writings of B.T. Hotep, with their common, their private interpretation. And it had been contaminated. But brothers and sisters, the seventh step, the present truth under the seventh seal, it is pure, unadulterated, according to the voice of inspiration. And meaning, brothers and sisters, that it had been purified and all doctrinal errors had been omitted and had been taken out completely and taken out, brothers and sisters. Now let us go back again to our reading, or our subject. Let us distinctly separate the image of the beast at the time when it is still a bill. What is the image of the beast? According to 2 Symbolic Code 7 and 8, page 12, church and state. Or in other words, that bill is a combination, brothers and sisters. It was formed with the combination of those who are in civil authorities and those who are in religious aspects or in ecclesiastical authorities. That bill that had been formed is a combination of church and state. And in 1888, it was died. But it was predicted in the Bible that it will be revived again. That predicted president will give life to that bill that died in 1888. And the Sunday movement is making its way in darkness, canceling the true issue according to volume 5, 452. But in this study, we would like to emphasize, brothers and sisters, that in the period while this bill did not as yet became a law, that what it means by hold the four winds. The winds is representing to the time when the bill will become a law. So to hold the winds is to protect that bill will not become a law, not until the 144,000 are completely sealed. So since the admonition given by the inspiration that we need to strive of all the power that God has given us according to 7 BC 970 to be a part of the 144,000 living saints, that is in the period of time when the bill did not as yet became a law, brothers and sisters. And in that period of time, when the bill did not as yet became a law, that is illustrated that all who persistently hold that errors or refuse the present truth under the 7th seal, brothers and sisters, which is the pure unadulterated truth, by which in TM page 65 it says, the righteousness of Christ. They were illustrated in the Bible that spiritually they were already worshiping the beast, worshiping the image, and receiving the mark in their foreheads. Because you refuse that the present truth will be written in your foreheads, the present truth under the 7th seal. Then to reject the present truth is to place yourself subject to be misled. That statement in 2SR page 153. Subject to be misled. Or in track number 15 on page 57, it says, one party permitted themselves to be deceived. So can you imagine that you permitted the devil to deceive you? Permitted themselves to be deceived. The same statement in 2SR on page 61 saying, let's read that statement in 2SR page 61. The only answer that can be given is the Jewish nation permitted him to becloud their eyes. So we permit Satan to becloud our eyes. Permitted themselves to be deceived because they did not love the present truth. Right? That is the statement in 1 TJ number 50. On page 25, it says, beginning from page 24, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth that they might be saved. You see? Because they receive not the love of the truth. That is the present truth. So that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be dumb who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. And then it says, we see that if we do not fall in love with the truth or with the present truth, deception is inevitable. No, none are deceived by coming in contact with error, for we are in contact with it anyway, from the time we are born to the time we die. But everyone who does not love the truth is sure to be deceived, regardless what he may do to avoid it. 1 TG number 50, page 25. So, brothers and sisters, it is high time now that we need to open our hearts, our minds, our understanding, free from prejudice, and study closely the prophecies, brothers and sisters. In parallelism, the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary and the work of Satan on the earth. I remember that statement in tract number 9, page 64. And furthermore, as the 8th section of the church eternal, is of the 7th section, the church temporal. Just so the 8th beast, the premillennial world, so is of the 7th beast, the premillennial world. This inescapable parallelism between the work of God and the work of Satan. We know the work of God is revealed through sanctuary construction and service, according to 2SR page 187, and also in Psalm 77 verse 13. It says here in 2SR page 187, in the sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. So the plan of salvation is revealed through the sanctuary construction and service in the heavenly sanctuary. Now, it says that this inescapable parallelism between the work of God, so we need to study the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, the work of God, and the work of Satan, how Satan tried to the utmost of his ability to hide in the minds of God's people Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary. But it is pertaining to Christ's mediation in the holy place rather than in the most holy place. Because Jesus Christ is very specific in Matthew 24 verse 15 that the abomination stand in the holy place. Meaning, the abomination, brothers and sisters, is that Satan had been able to successfully hide Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary in the holy place. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, during the period of pagan Rome, the church by which Satan had been successfully trodden underfoot, the daily and the sanctuary, is the Jewish church. They were in total ignorance that the burnt offerings, those sacrifices of animals, is pointing to the death of Jesus Christ, that the Levitical priesthood on the earthly sanctuary is only a pattern to the heavenly sanctuary. And Satan had been able to successfully hide from their understanding that when Jesus Christ died on the cross, that sanctuary on earth is no longer applicable. The sanctuary is already in heaven, and they had no knowledge. But thank God, there is a church by which God bestowed unto them such knowledge, and that is the Apostolic Church. And in the second period of the exceeding great horn, concerning the papacy, the proceedings at that time is in the holy place. Satan had been able to successfully hide in their minds concerning Christ's mediatorial work in the holy place. But according to 2SR 139, in 1844, Satan lost control. Or in other words, when the proceedings is already in the most holy place, Satan had not been able trod underfoot concerning the knowledge of the sanctuary, the proceedings in the most holy place. Here in 2SR 139, it says, but the sanctuary and the daily were held to the ground by the great horn up to 1844. At that time, he lost control of them, and the power of the three angels' messages raised the truth from the ground or from underfoot and placed it in the church. 2SR 139. And since it was predicted beforehand that the exceeding great horn will also tread underfoot the daily and the sanctuary, brothers and sisters, in the Protestant period, and it is concerning the holy place, by which the Bedean has no knowledge when Jesus Christ will left the most holy place and then returned. The prophet made it so plain in Testimonies for the Church, volume 2. Let's read again. Testimonies for the Church, in volume 2, page 190, it says here, Jesus has left us word. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all watch. We are waiting and watching for the return of the master, who is to bring the morning, lest coming suddenly he find us sleeping. What time is he referred to? Not to the revelation of Christ in the clouds of heaven to find a people asleep. No, but to his return from his ministration in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, when he lays off his priestly attire and clothed himself with the garments of vengeance, and when the mandate goes forth, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is holy, let him be holy still. So in this reading in Testimonies for the Church, volume 2, 190 and 191, the parable in Mark 13, verse 33 to verse 37, no, it is not pointing to the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, but Christ's return to the most holy place. And the word return can never be applied if Jesus Christ did not left the most holy place. Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place since October 22, 1844. That is the only knowledge by which the Bedean has, brothers and sisters, in reality. They have no knowledge that when Jesus Christ will finish the investigative judgment of the dead, blotting out of the sins of the first four seals. Brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, because God gave an identification of each group to pass in the judicial proceedings, both in the holy and most holy place. The first one that passed the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary is the temple. Who are they, the temple? The temple recorded in Revelation 11, verse 1 to 3, as explained by the shepherd's rod in tract number 5, 109 and 110. And the temple are those who died under the first 5 seals. First seal, second, third, fourth, and fifth. They are called temple. And their proceedings commence in 44 AD, according to the Great Controversy 421, saying that Christ's ministration in the holy place continued 1,800 years, 18 centuries. How do we know that that is 44 AD? Because Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in 1844. Then it's easy, 1844 minus 1,800, then 44 AD. Then Jesus Christ continued his ministration in the holy place 1,800 years from 44 AD to 1844. 1,800 years, then in 1844 transferred to the most holy place. Did we know the proceedings from 44 AD to 1844? The only knowledge that we have is Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 22, 1844, and that is all. The proceedings in 1844 onwards is pertaining to the saints that will be resurrected in the first general resurrection. That is their identification, as stated in 1 TG number 11, page 11. Who are they? For sure, it must be only the first seal, the second seal, the fourth and fifth seal, because the third seal, they will be resurrected under Ezekiel 37. And the sixth seal, they will be resurrected in Daniel chapter 12. So these three resurrected saints have different proceedings. The proceedings of the first 4 seals, those will be resurrected in the first general resurrection. The proceedings of Ezekiel 37, those will be resurrected on the special resurrection, that is the third seal, Ezekiel 37, the proceeding of the sixth seal, those will be resurrected on the resurrection on Daniel chapter 12. Or in other words, the proceedings of the first six seals are divided into three divisions. The first four seal, the third seal, and then the sixth seal. And then proceed the proceeding under the seventh seal. So it's very important, brothers and sisters, to have a complete knowledge concerning the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, because that's what it means by the message of the third angel, according to Story of Redemption, page 381. Or in other words, while studying the third angel's message, it does not referring alone to the beast revelation, which is pertaining to the work of Satan, but at the same time, we'll be studying the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary, by which through the beast revelation, it was completely revealed by God, the deception of Satan, how he deceived the whole world to be ignorant concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. We will continue this subject, brothers and sisters, on our next episode, and hoping the good Lord will bless you. Have a wonderful evening.